My brother, my sister, let me begin with something strange. Imagine this. You are sitting in a room completely alone. No one is there. No eyes watching you. No one judging you. No one observing anything you do. Now suddenly, someone walks in, and without saying a single word, they just look at you. And in that exact moment, something changes inside you. Your posture adjusts. Your thoughts start moving. Your awareness increases. And if they keep looking, you begin to feel uncomfortable. You look away. You pretend to be busy. You try to avoid that gaze. Now ask yourself, what actually changed? Did you change? Or did your awareness of yourself change? Because a few seconds ago, you were completely fine, relaxed, at ease. But the moment you felt seen, you became someone else. More careful, more controlled, more aware. My brother, my sister, this is where the problem begins. Not in the eyes of people, but in how you see yourself when you feel seen. Because when you sit alone, you are not judging yourself the same way. You are not questioning every movement. You are not analyzing every expression. But the moment someone looks at you, you begin to look at yourself through their eyes. And that is heavy. That is exhausting. That is why your eyes move away. Not because you cannot look at people, but because you cannot stay with the version of yourself you see in that moment. So you escape, you look down, you break contact, you shift your focus, not from them, but from yourself. And here is the deeper reality. If your heart was at peace with who you are, being seen would not feel like pressure. It would feel normal, light, natural. But when there are doubts inside you, insecurities you haven't faced, thoughts you haven't resolved, then every gaze feels like exposure, like something might be discovered. And that is why even a simple conversation can feel heavy. So today, we are not just talking about eye contact. We are talking about your inner state, your thoughts, your heart, your connection. Because once that is settled, your eyes will no longer run. They will rest calmly, naturally, without force. So stay with me, my brother, my sister, because what you are about to understand will not only change how you look at people, it will change how you look at yourself. Your eyes keep moving because your heart is holding more than you can explain. You're in the middle of a simple conversation, nothing serious, nothing intense. Someone is speaking to you and you're trying to listen. But your eyes don't stay still. They shift, they drop, they search for something else to look at. The floor, your hands, anything but their face. And the strange part is, you notice it. You're aware of it while it's happening. You even try to correct it. Focus, look at them, stay present. But within seconds, your gaze slips away again. Not once, again and again. And a quiet question begins to grow inside you. Why am I like this? Listen carefully. This is not random. This is not something happening without a reason. There is something deeper beneath this behavior. Because your eyes are not just looking, they are responding to what your heart is carrying. And right now, your heart is carrying more than you realize. You might not have the words for it. You might not even fully understand it yourself. But the weight is there, and your body is reacting to it. Your eyes are reacting to it. Because when the inside becomes heavy, the outside begins to reflect it. Think about it. There are thoughts that have been circling in your mind for days, maybe weeks, unanswered questions, unresolved feelings, things you keep pushing aside because you don't have time to deal with them. Or maybe because dealing with them feels uncomfortable. So you ignore them. You distract yourself. You keep moving forward. But the heart does not forget. It stores. It carries quietly. And when you find yourself in a moment that requires presence, like a conversation, that weight begins to surface. Not in words, but in behavior. Your focus weakens, your attention drifts, and your eyes struggle to stay grounded because a part of you is not fully there. A part of you is still inside your own mind, trying to process what you haven't faced yet. You're standing in front of someone, but internally you're somewhere else. And that distance shows in your gaze. This is why forcing eye contact feels unnatural, because you're trying to control something on the outside while something on the inside remains unresolved. You're trying to fix the symptom without understanding the source, and that creates tension. So instead of becoming present, you become more aware of yourself, more self-conscious, more uncomfortable, and the cycle continues. Your eyes move, you notice it, you try to fix it, you fail, and now you feel worse. But what if the problem is not your eyes? What if the problem is not your social skill? What if the real issue is something much deeper, something much quieter, something you've been avoiding? Because when the heart is overwhelmed, it does not always express itself through words. Sometimes it expresses itself through restlessness, through distraction, through subtle signs that only you can feel. And this is one of them. Your eyes are not the problem. They are the signal. A signal that your inner world needs attention. A signal that something inside you is asking to be acknowledged, not suppressed, not ignored, acknowledged. So pause for a moment. Be honest with yourself. What have you been carrying lately? What thoughts keep returning when everything becomes quiet? What feelings do you avoid by keeping yourself busy? There is something there, something real, and your eyes are reacting to it every time you try to be present with someone. Because presence is not just physical. You can stand in front of someone and still be absent, and your eyes reveal that absence. They reveal when your mind is scattered, when your heart is heavy, when your soul is not at ease. And there is no shame in that. This is part of being human. You are not meant to be perfectly composed at all times. You are not meant to carry everything silently without it affecting you, but you are meant to recognize what is happening inside you. Because awareness is the beginning of healing. Once you understand that your eyes are reacting to your inner state, everything changes. Now you stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking, I'm awkward, I'm bad at communication, there's something wrong with me. And you start asking better questions. What am I feeling right now? Why does this moment feel heavy? What is my heart trying to tell me? And those questions begin to open doors. Because the truth is, your heart is not trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to process something that needs your attention. And until you give it that attention, it will keep showing up in small ways. In your focus, in your energy, in your presence. And yes, even in your eye contact. So instead of forcing yourself to act normal, try something different. Slow down, not outside, inside. Give yourself moments where you are not distracted. Moments where you allow your thoughts to come forward without running from them, without immediately trying to fix them. Just observe, just listen. Because sometimes the reason your eyes can't stay still is because your mind has not been given the space to settle. You've been moving too fast, thinking too much, avoiding too many internal conversations. And now your system is asking for a pause, a real pause. Not scrolling, not noise, not distraction, silence, reflection, connection. And this is where something beautiful begins to happen. When you start facing what you've been carrying, the weight begins to shift. Not instantly, but gradually. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions become less chaotic. Your mind becomes more grounded. And naturally, your presence improves. You don't force it. It happens. Because now, you are actually there. Not divided, not distracted. Present. And when you are truly present, your eyes follow. They become steady, calm, natural, not because you trained them, but because your inner state changed. And this is something many people misunderstand. They try to fix behavior without addressing the heart. They try to appear confident while feeling overwhelmed inside, and that disconnect always shows. But when you take care of your inner world, your outer behavior aligns on its own. Your eyes don't need to be controlled. They simply reflect your calmness, your steadiness, your clarity. So if you recognize yourself in this, take it as a sign, not of weakness, but of awareness. Your system is speaking to you in a quiet way, through something as small as your gaze. And that message is simple. Slow down, pay attention. Something inside needs you. So tonight, instead of criticizing yourself, sit with yourself without pressure, without judgment, and begin to listen. Because once your heart feels heard, your eyes will finally feel at rest. You avoid their eyes because you fear what they might see in you. You feel it the moment your eyes meet theirs. A small pause, a flicker of discomfort, and then you look away, quickly, almost automatically, like something inside you decided for you. You didn't plan it, you didn't think about it, but it happened. And now you're aware again. Why did I do that? So you try to correct it. You lift your gaze, you force yourself to look again. But this time it feels even heavier, even more uncomfortable, like you're standing in a place you don't belong. So your eyes escape again. And now the conversation continues. But inside you, something else has started. A quiet storm. Thoughts begin to rise. What do they think about me? Do I look confident? Am I saying the right thing? Do they notice something is off? And suddenly, you're not listening anymore. You're not present anymore. You're watching yourself, analyzing yourself, judging yourself through their eyes. And this is where the real problem begins, because you are no longer speaking to a person. You are performing in front of them, trying to manage how you appear, trying to control how you are perceived, trying to protect an image that you're not even sure is real. And that pressure makes eye contact feel dangerous, because eye contact feels like exposure, like standing under a light that reveals everything. Your doubts, your fears, your insecurities. So your mind tells you, look away, stay safe, and you obey. Not because you are weak, but because you feel vulnerable, and vulnerability without security feels like a threat. But listen carefully. Where did this fear come from? At some point, you learned to care deeply about how people see you. Maybe someone criticized you. Maybe someone judged you. Maybe you were compared to others. Maybe you were made to feel like you weren't enough. And that moment stayed with you. Not loudly, quietly. It became a belief. I need to be careful how I appear. I need to make sure people don't see my flaws. I need to protect myself. So now, every interaction carries that weight. Every eye contact feels like a test. And you're trying to pass it without even knowing the rules. But here is the truth that will free you. No human being has the power to define your worth. No. They don't see your full story. They don't know your struggles. They don't understand your intentions. They see fragments, moments, surfaces. And yet, you're allowing those limited views to control how you feel about yourself. You're shrinking in front of incomplete perspectives while forgetting something much greater. Allah sees you completely, fully, every thought, every intention, every struggle you've never spoken about. And despite seeing all of that, He still gives you another day, another chance, another opportunity to grow. He does not expose you. He covers you. He does not reject you. He invites you back again and again. So ask yourself honestly, why are you afraid of being seen by people when the one who truly sees you has never abandoned you? The fear you feel is not in their eyes. It's in what you believe those eyes represent. Judgment, rejection, disapproval, But those are assumptions, not realities, because most people are too focused on themselves. They are thinking about their own image, their own words, their own fears, just like you are. They are not analyzing you as deeply as you imagine. But even if someone does judge you, what changes? Does it remove your value? Does it erase your purpose? Does it take away your connection with Allah? No. So why give it that much weight? Why allow a temporary opinion to create permanent discomfort inside you? This is what needs to shift. Not your eyes, your perspective. Because once you understand that your worth is not in their hands, something inside you relaxes. You stop trying so hard to control how you appear. You stop performing. You stop overthinking every small detail. And slowly, you return to yourself, to a more natural state, a more grounded presence, where you are not trying to impress, but simply trying to connect. And when that shift happens, eye contact stops feeling like a threat. It becomes neutral, simpler, human. You look at someone not to prove anything, but to be present with them, to listen, to understand, to communicate. And that simplicity removes the pressure. But this takes time, because beliefs don't change overnight. You have trained your mind for years to fear judgment. So you cannot expect instant freedom. But you can begin with awareness. Start noticing your thoughts in those moments. When your eyes drop, don't just correct your gaze. Pause internally. Ask yourself, what am I afraid they will see? And be honest. Is it insecurity? Is it doubt? Is it fear of being misunderstood? Whatever it is, bring it to the surface. Because hidden fears control you, but seen fears lose their power. And then remind yourself, I am not defined by this moment. I am not defined by their opinion. I am seen by Allah, and that is enough. Repeat it. Not just once, again and again, until your mind starts to believe it, until your heart starts to settle. And as that happens, you'll notice something subtle. Your eyes won't feel as heavy. Your presence won't feel as tense. You won't feel the need to escape as quickly, because the threat was never outside. It was inside. And now you're slowly removing it. So the next time you feel that urge to look away, don't fight it aggressively. Understand it. Recognize it. And gently bring yourself back, not to impress, not to perform, but to be present. Because you don't need perfect eye contact. To be worthy, you need inner stability. And once that begins to grow, everything else follows, including your gaze. You feel drained in simple conversations because your soul is running low. You sit with people, nothing intense is happening, no arguments, no pressure, just a normal conversation. But inside you, it feels heavy. Your energy drops faster than it should. Your focus slips. Your eyes begin to drift again. And you wonder, why is something so simple so exhausting for me? You try to act normal. You nod. You respond. You stay engaged, at least on the surface. But inside, you're tired. Not physically, something deeper. A kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. A tiredness that shows up in your presence, in your voice, in your ability to stay connected in a moment, and your eyes reflect it. Because when the soul is low, the body cannot hide it. And here is what many people misunderstand. They think this is just personality. They say, maybe I'm just introverted. Or maybe I'm just not a social person. But this goes deeper than that. Because there was a time when you had more ease, more natural energy, more presence. You could look at someone without overthinking. You could stay in a moment without feeling drained. So what changed? Look closely. Your life became full of responsibilities, full of worries, full of thoughts that never fully settled. You kept going. You kept pushing. You handled what needed to be handled. But something inside you never got the chance to recharge. Your heart kept giving but wasn't receiving enough. Your mind kept running but never slowed down. And your soul quietly started to empty. And when the soul becomes empty, everything begins to feel heavier than it should. Even simple conversations, even eye contact, even being present. Because presence requires energy, not just physical energy, spiritual energy. And when that is low, you start to withdraw. Not because you dislike people, but because you don't have enough within you to give to the moment. So your eyes move away, your focus fades, your responses become shorter because you are trying to preserve what little energy you have left. And there is no shame in that. But there is something important you must understand. You cannot keep pouring from an empty heart. You cannot keep showing up fully when something inside you is running low, and ignoring that only makes it worse. So the solution is not to force yourself to be more social. The solution is not to train yourself to perform better in conversations. The solution is to restore what is missing inside you. Because when the inside is full, the outside becomes easy. When the soul is nourished, presence becomes natural. Eye contact becomes effortless. Connection becomes light again. So ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you felt spiritually full? Not distracted, not entertained, but genuinely at peace. When was the last time your heart felt calm without needing anything external? For many people, that moment feels distant because life has become loud. Constant input, constant movement, constant thinking. And in that noise, your connection with Allah became weaker. Not intentionally, gradually. You still believe, you still care, but the depth, the consistency, the quiet connection, it faded. And that has an effect, a real effect, because your soul was created to connect with Allah. And when that connection weakens, your entire inner state becomes unstable. Your thoughts become heavier. Your emotions become harder to manage. Your presence becomes weaker. And suddenly, even something small, like maintaining eye contact, feels like effort. Because you are trying to operate without the strength that was meant to support you. So instead of blaming yourself, return to the source. Not people, not distractions. Allah. Because this is where restoration begins. Not in a dramatic way, not all at once, but in small, consistent steps. A prayer done with focus, a moment of dua where you are honest, a pause in your day where you remember Him without rushing. These small acts start to refill what has been drained, slowly, quietly, but powerfully. And as that connection grows, you'll begin to notice changes, subtle at first. Your thoughts feel less chaotic. Your emotions feel more balanced. Your mind feels clearer. And without trying, your presence becomes stronger. You sit with people and it doesn't feel as heavy. You listen and you are actually there. Your eyes stay steady. Not because you forced them, but because you are no longer scattered inside. You are grounded. And that grounding comes from something deeper than social skill. It comes from spiritual stability. This is why some people can sit quietly, say very little, and still feel present, because they are not empty inside. They are connected, and that connection gives them calmness, clarity, ease. So if you recognize this pattern in yourself, take it as a sign, not of weakness, but of direction. Your soul is asking for attention, not through words, through how you feel, through how you show up, through how quickly your energy drops. And the response to that is not pressure, it's care. Care for your inner state, care for your connection with Allah, care for the parts of you that have been neglected. So don't rush to fix your behavior. Restore your source and trust this. when your soul begins to fill again, your presence will return, your energy will stabilize, and your eyes will finally feel at ease staying in the moment, because now you are truly there. Your lowered gaze is either strength or a sign you're shrinking inside. From the outside, it looks the same. You look down, you avoid eye contact, you keep your gaze controlled. And if someone is watching you, they might assume one simple thing: you're shy. But what they don't see is what's happening inside you. Because two completely different realities can produce the same behavior. One comes from strength, the other comes from insecurity. And only you know which one you are living. There are moments when lowering your gaze feels peaceful, intentional, like you are choosing where your attention goes. You are not pulled by every face, not distracted by every movement. There is control, there is dignity. You don't feel small, you feel grounded. That is not weakness, that is strength, that is haya, a quiet form of self-respect, a protection of your focus, a discipline of your eyes. And in a world where people stare without limits, this kind of control is rare. It is powerful because you are not reacting to the world. You are choosing how you engage with it. And when that choice is made for the sake of Allah, it carries a different weight. A calmness, a steadiness, a sense of peace that stays with you even after the moment passes. But then there is another experience, one that looks similar on the outside, but feels completely different inside. You look down, but there is no peace in it, only discomfort. Your chest feels tight, your thoughts become loud, your awareness of yourself increases. And instead of feeling in control, you feel like you are disappearing, like you're trying to take up less space, trying not to be noticed, trying not to be seen too clearly. And that is not haya, that is insecurity. That is a part of you that feels small, trying to protect itself. So you lower your gaze, not because you are choosing to, but because you feel you have to. Because looking up feels too heavy, too exposing, too uncomfortable. And this is where confusion begins. Because the action is the same, but the source is different. And if you don't recognize the difference, you might start justifying something that actually needs healing. You might tell yourself, I'm just modest, when in reality, you are afraid. Afraid of being judged, afraid of being seen, afraid of not being enough. So you hide behind the same behavior that in another context would have been strength. And over time, that avoidance becomes your default, your identity, the way you move through the world. But inside, you don't feel strong, you feel limited. And that limitation grows quietly because anything that is avoided repeatedly gains power over you. So the question is not, do I make eye contact or not? The question is, what is driving my behavior? Is it intention or is it fear? Because intention brings calm, fear brings tension, and you can feel the difference. Be honest with yourself. When you lower your gaze, what do you feel? Peace or pressure? Clarity or confusion? Strength or discomfort? Your answer will tell you everything you need to know. And once you see it clearly, you can begin to respond correctly. If it is strength, protect it, because true modesty is something beautiful. It protects your heart. It keeps your focus clean. It reminds you that not everything deserves your attention. And in a world full of distractions, this is a rare quality. But if it is insecurity, then it is not something to hide behind. It is something to work through, because hiding it does not heal it. It only keeps it in place. And healing begins with understanding. Why do you feel small? Where did that belief come from? Who made you feel like you needed to shrink? Because that feeling did not appear without a reason. It was built through experiences, through words, through moments that stayed with you longer than they should have. And now it shows itself in subtle ways, in your posture, in your voice, in your gaze. But here is what you must remember. You were not created to feel small. You were not created to disappear in front of people. Allah gave you presence. He gave you a voice. He gave you a place in this world that no one else can take. And when you forget that, you begin to reduce yourself. You begin to move through life as if you are less worthy, less capable, less deserving. And that belief affects everything, including how you carry your gaze. So the work is not to force eye contact. The work is to rebuild how you see yourself, to remind yourself that your value does not come from people's reactions. It comes from your relationship with Allah, from your sincerity, from your effort, from your intentions. And when that understanding becomes real, your posture changes, your presence changes, not aggressively, not in a forced way, but naturally. You begin to take up your space again. You begin to exist without feeling like you need to hide. And your gaze reflects that. You don't stare, you don't force, you simply exist calmly, steadily, with awareness and balance. You know when to lower your gaze, and you know when to hold it, not based on fear, but based on choice. And that is the goal. Not to eliminate the behavior, but to purify the reason behind it. Because when the reason is correct, the action becomes powerful. But when the reason is rooted in fear, the same action becomes a limitation. So look within, not at your eyes, but at your heart. Because that is where the truth is. And once that truth becomes clear, everything else begins to align, including your gaze. You look away from people because your past still whispers warnings. There was a moment, maybe you don't talk about it, maybe you've pushed it to the side, but it happened. You looked at someone and believed what you saw. Trust, sincerity, safety. You thought you understood them. You thought their words matched their intentions. And for a while, everything felt normal until it wasn't. Something changed. They changed. Or maybe they revealed something that was always there. And suddenly, what you saw in their eyes no longer felt safe. It felt unfamiliar, unpredictable. And that moment stayed with you, not loudly, but deeply. You moved on. You continued your life. You didn't stop functioning. But something inside you adjusted. Quietly, you became more careful, more aware, more guarded, not just with that person, but with people in general. And now, even in simple interactions, that memory echoes. You might not think about it directly. You might not connect it consciously, but your body remembers, your mind remembers, your heart remembers. So when someone looks at you, something inside you reacts, not to them, but to what you've experienced before. And your eyes move away, because eye contact feels like risk. It feels like opening a door you once opened freely and then had to close painfully. So now you keep it closed, not out of anger, out of protection. You tell yourself, I'm just being careful. I don't want to get too close. I don't want to misread someone again. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable. But look deeper. There is fear, not loud fear, subtle fear. The kind that shapes behavior without announcing itself. The kind that builds walls, one small brick at a time. Until one day, you find yourself distant, disconnected, even when you're surrounded by people. Because you've trained yourself to avoid vulnerability, to avoid that level of openness. And eye contact is one of the first things to go, because eye contact is not just visual. It is emotional, it is presence, it is a form of connection. And connection requires a level of trust, even if it's small, even if it's momentary. So when trust has been broken before, your system becomes cautious. It limits exposure, it avoids depth, it keeps things surface level, and your gaze reflects that. You look, but not fully. You engage, but not deeply. you stay present, but with a part of you held back. And that part of you is trying to protect you from being hurt again. But here is what you must understand. Protection can quietly turn into isolation, because when you close yourself off from risk completely, you also close yourself off from connection. And over time, that lack of connection creates a different kind of pain, a quieter one, loneliness, even in the presence of others. And now you are caught in a cycle. You avoid connection to prevent pain, but that avoidance creates a different kind of discomfort, and your eyes carry that tension. They don't settle, they don't relax, because a part of you is always on guard, always scanning, always measuring the situation. Is this safe? Can I trust this person? Should I stay open or pull back? And that internal process drains you, even in simple interactions, even in small moments. So the solution is not to force yourself to trust blindly again. That is not wisdom. But the solution is also not to close yourself completely, because that is not healing. Healing is balance. It is learning to be aware without being closed. It is learning to engage without losing yourself. It is learning to allow connection without depending on it for your sense of security. And this begins with one realization. Not every person is your past. Not every interaction will end the same way. Not every gaze carries harm. Yes, you were hurt. Yes, you learned and that lesson matters. But it was meant to make you wiser, not smaller. It was meant to teach you awareness, not fear. So instead of using your past as a reason to withdraw, use it as a guide. A filter, not a wall. You can be present and still be careful. You can engage and still protect your boundaries. You can look at someone and still remain grounded within yourself. Because your safety does not come from controlling others. It comes from your connection with Allah. When that connection is strong, you don't rely on people to feel secure. And you don't fear them to stay protected. You find balance. And that balance changes how you show up. You don't rush into trust, but you also don't run away from it. You observe. You take your time. You stay aware. And in that space, your gaze begins to settle. Not because the world suddenly became safe, but because you became stable internally. So the next time you notice your eyes moving away, pause it. Not to judge yourself, but to understand. Ask yourself, am I reacting to this person or to my past? And be honest, because awareness breaks patterns. And once you begin to separate the present from the past, something shifts. Your reactions soften, your fear reduces, your openness returns, slowly, naturally, without force, because you are no longer controlled by what happened before. You are guided by what you have learned. And that is a powerful place to be. A place where your past no longer limits you, but shapes you. And from that place, your presence becomes different. Your interactions become lighter, and your eyes no longer carry the same hesitation. Because now, you are not trying to protect yourself by hiding. You are protecting yourself by understanding. And that understanding brings a calm that others can feel, even in the way you look at them. You feel like everyone is watching you because you're trapped inside your own mind. You walk into a room, nothing unusual. People are talking, some are on their phones, some barely notice you, but inside you, something shifts. A quiet tension. You feel it in your chest, in your thoughts, and suddenly, it feels like all eyes are on you. Even when they're not, you sit down, but your awareness doesn't settle. It increases. You become conscious of everything. Your posture, your hands, your voice, your face, even your breathing. And then comes the feeling, they're watching me. They can see something is off. They're judging me. So your eyes drop. You avoid looking up, because looking up feels like stepping into that attention. and that attention feels heavy. So you stay low, safir, more hidden, but listen carefully. This feeling is not coming from them. It's coming from you. Because what you're experiencing is not being watched, it's self-consciousness. And self-consciousness is when your attention turns inward in the wrong way. Instead of being present with the moment, you become the object of your own focus. You start observing yourself, monitoring yourself, correcting yourself in real time. And that creates pressure, because now you are not just having a conversation, you are performing and judging your performance at the same time. You are speaking and analyzing every word as you say it. You are existing and questioning how you appear while doing it. And that is exhausting. That is why your energy drops. That is why your eyes move. Because your mind is overloaded. You are trying to do too many things at once. Be present, be correct, be confident, be accepted. And that constant internal pressure makes even simple moments feel intense. But here is the truth. Most people are not focused on you. They are focused on themselves, their own thoughts, their own concerns, their own image, just like you are. They are not analyzing your eye contact. They are not studying your every move. They are not thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are. And this realization can free you, because the pressure you feel is created internally. You've placed yourself at the center of the room, when in reality, everyone else has placed themselves at the center of their own mind. So the weight you carry is unnecessary, but it feels real because your mind believes it. And once your mind believes something, your body reacts to it. Your heart rate changes, your focus shifts, your gaze moves. All because of a perception, not an actual threat. So what needs to change? Your focus. Right now, your focus is on yourself. How do I look? How do I sound? What do they think of me? And that focus keeps you trapped. Because the more you look at yourself, the more flaws you find. The more pressure you feel, the more uncomfortable you become. So your system tries to escape and your eyes move away. But what happens if you shift your focus? Instead of observing yourself, you observe the moment, the person speaking, the words being said, the meaning behind them. Instead of asking, how am I being seen? You ask, what is happening right now? And that small shift changes everything, because now you are no longer the center. The moment is, the conversation is, the purpose is, and that removes pressure, because you're not trying to control your image anymore. You're simply engaging. And when you engage fully, your mind has less space to overthink, less space to analyze, less space to create unnecessary fear. And naturally, your presence improves. Your gaze steadies. Not because you forced it, but because your attention is no longer divided. This is something many people struggle with, especially in a world that constantly tells you to think about yourself, your appearance, your status, your image. So you become hyper aware, hyper focused on how you are perceived, and that awareness turns into anxiety. But the solution is not to eliminate awareness completely. The solution is to direct it correctly, to become aware of what matters, not what traps you. So instead of watching yourself, watch your intention. Why are you speaking? Why are you listening? What is the purpose of this moment? When your intention becomes clear, your mind becomes calmer, because now you are anchored, not floating between thoughts, not lost in self-evaluation, anchored in purpose. And that anchor brings stability. So the next time you feel that pressure, that sense of being watched, pause internally. Remind yourself, this feeling is coming from my mind, not from reality. Then gently shift your focus outward, not aggressively, not forcefully, gently. Return to the conversation, return to the moment, return to what is actually happening. and allow yourself to be there without constant correction, without constant judgment. Because you don't need to monitor every second of your existence. You don't need to control how every movement appears. You are allowed to be natural, to be imperfect, to be human. And when you allow that, something softens inside you. The tension reduces, the pressure fades, and your eyes no longer feel the need to escape. They stay because you are finally present, not divided, not watching yourself, just there. And that presence is far more powerful than perfection. Because people don't connect with perfection, they connect with authenticity. And authenticity only exists when you are not trapped inside your own mind. So free yourself, not by forcing confidence, but by releasing the need to constantly evaluate yourself. Because once that need fades, your natural confidence begins to appear quietly, steadily, and your gaze becomes a reflection of that inner calm. There is another layer to this. It's not only that you feel watched, it's that you've trained yourself to keep watching you, even when no one else is. You sit in a conversation and a part of your mind is not listening. It's observing you. How did that sound? Was that awkward? Should I have said that differently? Why did I look away just now? And this doesn't happen once. It happens continuously. Every few seconds. Like a background voice that never turns off. So while the moment is moving forward, you are stuck replaying it in real time. Correcting, adjusting, overthinking. And because of that, you never fully arrive. You're physically present, but mentally, you're divided. Half of you is in the conversation. The other half is evaluating it. And that split creates tension. Because you are trying to live the moment and control it at the same time. You are trying to speak naturally while editing yourself constantly. And this is why everything starts to feel unnatural. Even your gaze. Because eye contact requires presence. It requires you to be there without hesitation, without constant interruption. But your mind keeps interrupting. So your eyes break, they move, they escape. Because you cannot stay steady externally when you are unstable internally. And the more you monitor yourself, the worse it becomes. Because monitoring creates pressure. Pressure creates tension. And tension creates more mistakes. Then your mind reacts to those mistakes. And now the cycle repeats. Faster, stronger, until even simple interactions feel overwhelming. But here is something you need to understand deeply. You were not designed to live like this. You were not created to constantly watch yourself as if you are an object. You were created to experience, to engage, to be present, not to analyze every second of your existence. Because when you analyze too much, you disconnect from reality. You move into your head and away from the moment. And the more time you spend in your head, the harder it becomes to return. Because your mind starts to believe that control equals safety. If I monitor everything, nothing will go wrong. If I stay aware of every detail, I won't embarrass myself. If I keep checking myself, I'll be accepted. But this is an illusion. Because the more you try to control everything, the more unnatural you become. And people don't connect with control. They connect with presence. So the very thing you are trying to protect, your image, starts to weaken. Because you are not allowing yourself to be real. You are filtering everything. And that filtering creates distance. Not just from others, from yourself. You start to lose your natural rhythm, your natural way of speaking, your natural way of being. Everything becomes calculated, measured, controlled. And that control comes at a cost. It drains your energy. It reduces your confidence. And it keeps your eyes moving because you are never settled. So what is the way out? You don't fight the thoughts aggressively. You don't try to silence your mind completely. you shift your relationship with it. Instead of obeying every thought, you start observing them. You notice the voice? That sounded awkward. But instead of reacting, you let it pass. You don't correct yourself immediately. You don't go back and fix every word. You stay in the moment. Because not every thought deserves your attention. And not every thought is true. Some are just habits. Patterns your mind learned over time. And now it repeats them automatically. But you don't have to follow them. You can let them exist without giving them control. And this takes practice. Because your mind is used to being in charge. Used to analyzing. Used to controlling. So when you stop feeding it, it will resist. It will get louder. It will try harder to pull you back. But if you stay consistent, something begins to shift. The thoughts lose intensity. They lose urgency. And you start to feel more space inside you, more calm, more clarity. And in that space, you return to yourself, to a version of you that is not constantly monitored, a version that speaks without over-editing, that listens without overthinking, that exists without pressure. And your eyes reflect that change. They stay not because you forced them, but because there is no longer a need to escape. There is no longer a need to hide from your own awareness, because your awareness has softened. It is no longer critical. It is no longer attacking. It is simply there, supportive, balanced, guiding you instead of controlling you. And this is where true ease begins. Not in perfect behavior, but in inner freedom. Freedom from constant self-evaluation. Freedom from the need to control every moment. Freedom to simply be. And when you reach that point, your presence becomes different. People feel it. Not because you are trying to impress, but because you are finally at ease within yourself. And that ease shows in your gaze. Calm, steady, natural. Because now you are not trapped inside your mind anymore. You are present fully, and that is something no amount of forced confidence can replace. You keep shrinking in front of people because you forgot who you stand with. There was a time when you didn't feel this small. You spoke without thinking too much. You looked at people without hesitation. You existed without constantly adjusting yourself. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Not suddenly, quietly. You began to hold back, a little at first, then more, until it became your normal. Now you enter a room and your presence feels reduced. You speak, but not fully. You look at people, but only for a moment. You listen, but a part of you stays hidden. And if you're honest with yourself, you know this is not who you truly are. This is a version of you that learned to shrink, learned to stay small, learned to avoid taking up space. Why? Because at some point, you felt like you had to. Maybe you were corrected too often. Maybe your confidence was broken slowly. Maybe you were made to feel like being visible was risky. So you adapted. You lowered your voice. You reduced your presence. You kept your gaze down. And over time, that adaptation became your identity. But here is the truth you need to hear. You were never created to live like this. Allah did not create you to disappear in front of people. He did not give you a voice just so you could silence it. He did not give you presence just so you could hide it. He honored you. And that honor does not depend on people. It does not increase when they approve of you. It does not decrease when they ignore you. It is given by the one who created you. But when you forget that, you start looking for validation in the wrong places. You start measuring your worth based on reactions, how people respond, how they look at you, how they treat you. And because those things are unstable, your sense of self becomes unstable too. So you adjust constantly. You shrink so you don't risk rejection. You hide so you don't feel exposed. You lower your gaze so you don't feel judged. And slowly, You become someone who is always holding back, even when there is no real threat, even when nothing is wrong. But your system doesn't know that anymore, because it has been trained to stay small, to stay safe, to avoid attention. But safety is not supposed to come from hiding. Real safety comes from knowing who you stand with. Because when you truly understand that Allah is with you, everything changes. Not in a loud way, in a deep way. You stop depending on people's approval. You stop fearing their judgment, because their opinion no longer defines your reality. You realize something powerful. Even if the entire room misunderstands you, you are still seen correctly by Allah. Even if people underestimate you, your value has not changed. Even if someone looks at you with judgment, it does not reduce what Allah has placed within you. And when that understanding becomes real, your posture changes. Not physically at first. Internally, you stop collapsing under pressure. You stop questioning your right to exist in a space. You stop asking for permission to be yourself, because you already have it from the one who matters most. And this shift begins to show. You don't try to be confident. You don't force eye contact. You don't perform. You simply stop shrinking, and that alone changes everything. You walk into a room and you are there, not hiding, not overthinking, not reducing yourself, just present. And your gaze reflects that. You look at people without fear, without needing to prove anything, without needing to impress, because you are not seeking validation anymore. You are grounded. And when you speak, your words carry weight, not because they are perfect, but because they come from a place of stability, a place that is not shaken by every reaction. And this is what many people are searching for, but looking in the wrong direction. They try to build confidence through appearance, through approval, through control. But real confidence comes from alignment. Alignment with Allah. Because when you know who you stand with, you stop worrying about who stands against you. And that removes a huge burden. A burden you've been carrying for too long. The burden of needing to be accepted by everyone. The burden of needing to appear a certain way. The burden of constantly adjusting yourself to fit in. You don't need that anymore, because your worth is not negotiable. It was given, and when you truly accept that, you begin to expand again, not in arrogance, not in pride, but in presence. You take up your space. You speak when you need to. You stay silent when it's right. You look when it's appropriate. You lower your gaze when it's better. But all of it comes from choice, not fear. And that is the difference. Because a person who acts from fear is always unstable, always reacting, always adjusting. But a person who acts from certainty is calm, consistent, grounded. And this is what you are returning to, not becoming someone new. Returning to who you were before you learned to shrink, before fear shaped your behavior, before doubt took control. And that return begins with one simple reminder. You are not standing alone. You never were. Allah is with you. In every room, in every conversation, in every moment you feel small. And when that truth settles inside you, you stop shrinking, because you no longer need to. And your eyes finally reflect that. Not in intensity, but in calmness. A calmness that comes from knowing you belong exactly where you are. And you don't need to hide anymore. There is something subtle happening inside you. You don't notice it at first, but it shapes everything. The way you speak, the way you sit, the way your eyes move. You are waiting for a signal, a sign that says, you're okay here. You can relax. You can be yourself. So you scan the room. You read people's reactions. You adjust your tone. You adjust your words. You adjust your presence, all to fit, all to be accepted. And until you feel that acceptance, you hold back. You stay careful. You stay small. Even your gaze waits for permission. You look briefly, then you pull away, because a part of you is asking, is it safe to stay here? And when you don't get a clear answer, you retreat. Not physically, internally. You withdraw your presence. You reduce your energy. You become less visible. And this becomes your habit. Entering spaces and waiting to be allowed to exist. But here is the truth you need to understand deeply. No one in that room has the authority to grant you that permission. No one, because your right to exist was never given by people. It was given by Allah. The moment He created you, He gave you presence. He gave you a place in this world. He gave you a voice. And that does not require approval. It does not need validation. It does not depend on reactions. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that. You started believing that your presence must be earned, that you need to behave a certain way, look a certain way, speak a certain way to be accepted. And because of that belief, you began to limit yourself. You began to wait. Wait before speaking. Wait before looking. Wait before expressing. And that waiting slowly turned into hesitation. And that hesitation became your default state. Even in moments where there is no real danger, even in conversations where nothing is wrong, you still hold back. Because your mind has been trained to seek approval first, to check the environment, to make sure it's safe, before you allow yourself to fully exist. But think about this. How many moments have you lost just waiting? How many times have you stayed quiet when you had something meaningful to say? How many times have you looked away when you could have connected? How many times have you reduced yourself just to avoid discomfort? And what did that give you? Temporary safety. But at the cost of your presence, at the cost of your authenticity, at the cost of becoming who you are meant to be. Because you cannot grow while constantly waiting for permission. You cannot become strong while always seeking approval. And you cannot feel stable while your sense of self depends on people's reactions. So something needs to shift, not outside, inside. You need to realize you already have what you're waiting for. You don't need someone to accept you, to exist fully. You don't need someone to validate you, to be present. You don't need someone to approve of you, to look up and engage, because your worth is not conditional. It is not something that increases or decreases based on how people respond to you. It is stable, given. And when you truly understand that, you stop waiting. You enter a space and you allow yourself to be there fully, without scanning every reaction, without adjusting every movement, without shrinking your presence. And this does not mean you become careless. It does not mean you ignore manners. It does not mean you act without awareness. It means you stop operating from fear. You stop needing confirmation. You stop checking if it's okay to exist, because you already know it is. And when that realization settles in your heart, your behavior changes naturally, not forced. You speak without overthinking every word. You listen without constantly evaluating yourself. You look at people without feeling like you're crossing a line. Your gaze becomes steady because it is no longer asking a question. It is no longer seeking approval. It is simply present. And that presence has a different energy, a calm energy, a grounded energy, one that people can feel. Not because you are trying to impress, but because you are no longer holding yourself back. And this is what many people misunderstand. They think confidence is loud. They think it's about dominating a room, being the center of attention, speaking the most. But real confidence is quiet. It is stable. It is the ability to exist without needing validation, to speak when needed, to stay silent when needed, to look when appropriate, to lower your gaze when appropriate. all from a place of choice, not fear. And this is what you are learning, to shift from permission to presence, from hesitation to stability, from shrinking to simply being. So the next time you enter a space, notice your pattern. Notice the urge to wait, to check, to adjust. And instead of following it automatically, pause it. Remind yourself, I don't need permission to exist here. Then gently allow yourself to engage. Not perfectly, not forcefully, just honestly. And over time, this becomes easier. Your mind stops asking for approval. Your body stops reacting with tension. And your presence becomes natural again, because you are no longer holding it back. And your eyes finally reflect that freedom. They stay, not to prove anything, not to impress anyone, but because you are no longer asking, am I allowed to be here? You already know the answer. And that knowing changes everything. The moment you return to Allah, your fear of people starts disappearing. There is a point where everything you've been carrying begins to feel too heavy. The overthinking, the self-doubt, the constant awareness of how you appear. It builds quietly until even small moments feel overwhelming. A simple conversation feels like pressure. Eye contact feels like exposure. Being present feels like effort. And you try to manage it. You try to fix it. You try to control your behavior. But nothing seems to fully settle, because the root is deeper than behavior. The root is disconnection, not from people, from Allah. And once you understand this, everything begins to make sense, because your heart was not created to find stability in people. People change, their opinions shift, their moods fluctuate, their reactions are unpredictable. So if your sense of security is tied to them, you will always feel unstable, always adjusting, always overthinking, always trying to protect yourself. And that is exactly what you've been feeling. But when you return to Allah, something different happens. Not instantly, not dramatically, but deeply. You begin to feel grounded again, not because your life suddenly becomes perfect, but because your source of stability changes. You are no longer relying on people's reactions to feel okay. You are no longer measuring yourself based on how others see you. You are anchored somewhere higher, somewhere thabit, unchanging. And that anchor starts to calm everything inside you. Your thoughts slow down. Your mind stops racing as much. Your heart feels less heavy. And without forcing anything, your presence begins to return, because presence comes from inner stability, and inner stability comes from connection with Allah. So how do you return? Not with pressure, not with guilt, but with sincerity. You begin with small steps, a prayer where you actually focus, even if it's just for a moment, a dua where you speak honestly, not perfectly. Honestly, you tell Allah what you feel, your fears, your confusion, your struggles, even the things you've never said out loud, because He already knows. But when you express it, you release it. And that release creates space inside you. Space that was once filled with tension, with overthinking, with fear. Now it begins to clear. And in that space, peace starts to enter, not all at once. Gradually, you begin to feel less reactive, less controlled by your thoughts, less affected by how people look at you, because your focus is shifting from creation to the Creator. And that shift changes your entire experience. You sit with people and it doesn't feel as intense, because you are not seeking something from them anymore. You are not seeking validation. You are not seeking approval. You are simply present. And that removes pressure, because pressure comes from expectation, from needing a certain outcome, from wanting to be seen a certain way. But when your heart is connected to Allah, those expectations begin to fade. You don't need to control how you appear. You don't need to manage every detail. You trust, not in people, in Allah. You trust that He sees you, that He knows your intentions, that He understands your struggles. And that trust creates calmness, a deep calmness, the kind that doesn't depend on external conditions. And that calmness shows in your behavior. You speak and your words feel lighter. You listen and you are actually present. You look at people and your gaze stays steady, not forced, natural, because there is no longer fear driving your actions. There is stability, there is acceptance, there is ease. And this is the transformation, not from effort, but from connection. Because when your heart is filled from the right place, everything else begins to align. Your thoughts, your emotions, your presence, even your eyes, they no longer move out of discomfort. They no longer escape. They stay calm, focused, at ease, because you are no longer divided inside. You are whole. And this wholeness comes from returning to the one who created you, the one who understands you completely, the one who never misjudges you, the one who never abandons you. So the next time you feel that tension, that discomfort, that urge to look away, don't just focus on the moment. Go deeper. Ask yourself, how is my connection with Allah right now? Because that answer will explain more than you think. And the solution is always the same. Return again and again, without shame, without delay. Because every time you return, you rebuild something inside you. Strength, clarity, peace. And with that, your fear of people begins to fade. Not because people changed, but because you did. You are no longer seeking from them. You are no longer defined by them. You are anchored beyond them. And that anchor gives you something powerful. A quiet confidence, a calm presence, a steadiness that doesn't need to prove anything. And when you carry that, your gaze reflects it. Not intense, not forced, just present. Because you are finally at ease within yourself. And that ease comes from knowing exactly where your heart belongs.